So, what we'll be discussing today is about C sharp collections. I'm going to start with the diagram so you will have a better view about the C sharp collections. So, remember, we were discussing about the C sharp instances, right? So, we by using the new keyword. So on the classes, we describe that a class is a blueprint. So we started like having a person class. So we have a first name. So we are automating the enrollment application system, right? So we have the last name, right? The first name, and we have the age, etc. So as you build the form, right, a physical form that we're talking about, a paper form, which is now being digitized. So we are building a blueprint of the enrollment application, and this will continue like course, etc. And as we build our classes, right? So this is a single instance. So the single instance will be stored in memory, right? So C sharp will have, or the computer will have a memory, right? Has a memory where the instances, all the data will be stored, right? So, but this is a single instance. Now we are talking about collections, right? So now, in collections, this will be a table now, right? So let's say, let's make it simple for now. So let's have, let's say, we have a three row table. So we have the first name, right? And we have the last name, right? We have the age, right? So in the single instance, we created a single entry, right? But in the collection, you will have multiple entries. So we have Bill, and you have the surname, right? So let's make myself younger. So now I'm 25 years old, and probably we have the course there, right? So we have the address, etc., right? Or we can add some more details, email, right? So we could have more names. So we could have John. We have John Doe, right? And the age, right? And the course, let's say BS IT, and the address, right? Let's say USA, etc. And as we grow our data, then it become a collection of people or enrollees, right? So now, how are we going to do that with C sharp, right? So as we mentioned, C sharp is a strongly typed language, okay? So it again will be a type, right? And each type has its own feature or capability. So you are building that capabilities, right? So let's now go back to the code example, right? So now we have the dog instance, right? So you create a dog, and you have a single instance for the dog. So how can you make it this a collection, right? So now we can use the list, right? So the list type, so because it's going to be a list type of dog, right? Right. Okay. So now you see it's turning red. Why? Because we are not referencing the correct library, right? So it's under using system that collections that generic. So once I right click and hover on the red squiggly, right click that, you will see it's automatically added on top on the using statement. So but then again, you will see it's under the system project, right, or the system library. So that's why I made sure that you understand the separation of a project. So you have a project here, animal.model, and it's referencing the animal.model classes, right? So the concept is the same, right? You have the system, which is the parent of all libraries, and below it is one of them is the collections.generic, right? Okay, so the generic has quite a few capabilities, but on this lesson we will be covering the list because that is the feature set that we will be covering. So now, uh, on the naming convention, we're gonna make it plural as well because it will be dogs, isn't it? Right? So because it's a collection of dogs, right? So we use the keyword again, list, right? Dog, right? So because it is type dog, okay. So now again, the pattern of this code is we have to put a open and close parentheses. Now we'll have dogs dot. So what will be, we can add, right, the instance of the dog, right? So let's say we create one instance of dog, right? So a single form or a single entry, then we could type in dog, right? So because this is dog, right? So let's say this is dog one, right? So you have dog one, okay. So now we have to copy that. So because we have changed the variable name, right? So now we need to create a second instance, right? So let's copy this dog one and make sure that it is added there, right? So now we create another object of dog, right? And we have dog 2, right? Equals to new dog, right? Okay, so now we have dog 2, right? So that animal ID, right, equals to 456, right? So now we have dog 2, the animal name, right? Let's say, so the name now is Cloud, right? So that's the dog name. Now we need to add it again to the collection, right? So it's a single instance, but it has to be added to the collection, right? So now, so as we add the single instances to the collection, now they'll be inside the memory, right? In memory of the computer, right? So since if you see here below, the dog is now missing. It's turning red because we have changed the name of dog to dog 2, right? So dog 1, right? So now, since this is a collection, we will need to loop, right, on each particular field. So let's go back to the PowerPoint, what I mean by that, right? So this is the collection. So let's say BS ComSci, right, address USA. So you could make the address longer if you want to, right? And you could add a property. Now you will need to loop, right? So let's see if there's a image here that represents a loop, right? So there's none at the moment, right? So a loop means it will go into circles, right? So the first loop, right? The first loop will loop in the first row, okay? And the second loop will go on the second row. So on each loop, if there's 10 rows, then C# will be able to loop within the collection, right? So we are representing it in a table because now it's a single dimensional view of this particular object or table or collection, but it can grow to a multi-dimensional, and C# can accommodate that, but for simplicity's sake, so right now I would like you to understand how the loop works. So how do we do that? Of course, again, we're going to come back. C# is a strongly typed language, so we will use objects that will accommodate that loop, right? So now the object to do that is one of the capabilities is the for each. So if you do a for, right, so you could do a for each, right? So what I did, I typed for and double tab, right? So now it's asking for the collection. So the collection is dogs, right? So now what it's saying, dogs collection, right, of item, right, dog, right, because you are looping all the dogs and it become a single item. So on each loop, right, on each loop, the for each dog in dogs, right, we will be able to read, right, the dog dot animal ID, right, dog, right. So now, so since we have the variable here, so what we're going to do is print it, right. So let's have console dot write line, right. Okay, so let's probably copy this spot here. So right, I'm gonna copy paste that to make my life easier. Alright, so dog name, dog.animal name, right? So because we have the animal name there, and we could have another, right? So let's copy paste this, right? So paste that dog ID, right? Then we have the dog that animal ID, okay, right. So now we are printing, so backspace, right, backspace. So we're just clearing out our code. Okay, so now let's comment this out. We don't need this for the moment. So we have the console.read line at the end. So after looping so this can be a number of loops. So probably we could have created 10 instances. So the for each will be looping 10 times, right? If you don't know the number, if it's going to be thousands, then it's going to be looping for thousands of iterations. Since you are well aware that's only 2, then it's only should be printing 2 instances of the dog, right, inside the dogs collection, right? So let's do that. Let's run this application. Okay, now you see that the for each managed to loop, right, the dog. Okay, so it has 2 data, right? So let's exit again, and I'd like you to be familiar with the breakpoint. So what I did in the corner, right beside the number, right? So if the number is not appearing, try to find out. So it's I think it's part of the view, where you could show the numbers right beside the Visual Studio. So you have the line numbers. It's easier for you to navigate, right? So on line 30 on my code, it could be higher or lower. So in this demonstration, it's on line 30. So now if we run it, right, so as you can see, it has stopped there. So it will help you hover, right, what's inside the dogs, right? So if you see, if I hover the dogs, you will see the count is 2. If you open a drop down, right, so you see the 2 instances. So it starts with the 0 number, right? So you'll see the animal ID. Since I did not put a dog breed, then it represents null, and dog ID is 0, right? So now if I go up and step over or press F10, then it will go each line of the code, right? So now you will see that he has written, right? So if you bring up from the taskbar, it should have printed the first iteration, right? Because first loop, because he has run the code already, right? So now we're going to the second loop, right? Right. So now after running it, okay, it will be printing the second instance, right? So now if we continue, right, so it checks that the dogs collection has already finished. It has 2 loops, so it will jump to the next line, which is console.read line. So this purpose is to stop the code, right, or receive entry of the code. So if we continue, right, so it stops there, right? So it's either press enter or just exit, since that's the behavior of the console.read line. Okay, so I'm now gonna exit, right? And I hope you understand C# collections. This is the end of this video. I'll see you to the next lesson.